very personalized talk because it's I have boys, but they are far too young to consider LA occlusion or something else. So evidence is clear to close bleeder concerning appendage occlusion. I need to admit that I'm really biased for this debate because LAO occlusion, for any reason, it's my passion since few years. And I think that people with passion can change the world for the better, including LAO occlusions. So no doubt that warfarin is effective to prevent stroke and to decrease mortality in patients with AFib. But it's a terrible drug for many well-known reasons, including the bleeding. It's a blood thinner. It's terrible. Let's be clear with the patient and with the doctor. Warfarin is rat poison. Dying is from bleeding. It's well known that the risk of stroke is often higher than we think in clinical practice. And if you consider a patient with a CHAT score of 1, the risk of stroke is 3% per year. That's quite high. And it's more than 8% per year if you have a CHAT score of at least 4. It is also well known that many patients are at high risk of bleeding in our practice. Patient with bleeding from different sources, cerebral microbleeds, patient with cirrhosis, patient on dialysis, and there's many others. It is also well known that as doctors, we often underestimate the fact that bleeding can be occult. It's not always overt bleeding, and they can have bad consequence. There's bad consequence also on blood loss. We should realize that bleeding is associated with chronic anemia, acute coronary syndrome, difficult to treat, heart failure, significant cost, and risk associated with the test. It's well known also that the NOAC now are the new standard of care in terms of anticoagulation because they are in theory safer than warfarin because they're associated with potentially less major bleeding. This is true actually for apixaban and adoxaban, 2 drugs. But it is never true concerning GI bleeding. There's no NOAC. With no NOAC, you bleed less than warfarin. It's even worse with rivaroxaban and the bigatron. But now, show me the evidence. You want to see the evidence why we should close the appendage of bleeders. Some people will say there's no evidence, including famous blogger on internet. They will say no evidence, including potentially Anita. I was supposed to debate against her this morning. I guess she ran away, and now here we are. But I think it's false. We have evidence. And concerning the Amplatzer cardiac plug, there's a large registry, the multi-center experience that we publish in Eurointervention, including 20 centers in Europe and my center in Canada, Montreal. Number one indication for closure was previous major bleeding in 40% of the patient. Very high success rate of procedure, 97%. 4% rate of major adverse event. Not too bad, but not perfect. It's going to be better in the most recent trial. And significant reduction of the risk of stroke with the device, and significant reduction of the risk of bleeding because most of the patients, they are not anticoagulated anymore after device occlusion. We have the same type of data with the Amulet, the second generation Amplatzer. Also a study largely from Europe, more than 1,000 patients, very high success rate of the procedure, low risk of major adverse event, 2.7%, very acceptable. It's a safe procedure. And same thing with the Watchman, with the large evolution registry, also largely in Europe. Again, more than 1,000 patients. It's a lot of patients for a device. Very high success rate of the procedure. Low rate of major adverse event, 2.7%. So my question to you and to my debater is how much evidence do we need in patients at high risk of stroke? One of the worst diseases on earth. I think we made the point this morning. and cannot be easily anticoagulated. And we need to be, we need some compassion here. I mean, we cannot just leave these patients by themselves. I mean, because that's clear, clot in the appendage, it's ugly. This is what it looks like. I see that very often. This is not pretty. And this is clear that these clots, they are large. They are typically causing large stroke with very high morbidity and mortality. So in conclusion, bleeders are at risk of stroke. LA occlusion is safe and it's effective, and it's based now on many large real-world registry. Please don't wait. Be decent with your patient and protect them with LA occlusion. Sorry to say that I have the feeling that I will win this debate.